And HSAs are a key area though with clients where it's very normal to sit on an excess amount of cash in an HSA because you can invest the money, but because it's out of sight, it's not, if you bank with Capital One and you have your HSA with another company and you invest with Fidelity, how often do you actually log on to your HSA account and look at it? I would bet you 95% of people don't even log on once a year. So unless you have an auto invest feature there, I do find that more people are sitting in cash than they even know. So that's always a helpful area. Mine auto invests everything above my deductible, which is $1,000 that I have just sitting cash. And there's times where I have to go back and like unwind some positions because we need more cash. This is a year that we've spent more money on child health care than we
Operationally,
have
they
in.
are kind of a pain because
Yeah,
if you do have anything above that $1,000 that you need to pay for, then you need to transfer. If you have the auto invest feature, you have to transfer it from the investment to the spending account, turn off the
correct.
auto invest so that it doesn't automatically sweep back in. We run into that too here in our family. Rules are meant to be enforced, but sometimes the minutia of the like I don't know the word that I'm looking for, but like the aspect of that rule, it becomes a thing where does it really matter? Like for instance, finish that last green bean on your plate because in this household we eat all of our food. There are
Yeah,
starving kids in China. Does it really matter? No. And so
right,
sometimes I'll step back and be like, what am I? Is it because of the aspect of control?
right.
I'm trying to enforce my will. In the grand scheme of everything that we're talking about here, it does not matter one bit. But we like to think that if we consistently make the quote unquote correct choices, that our kids will end up better in the future.
Welcome to the Advisor Dads podcast, where family, finance, and real life collide. We're two financial advisors and full time dads sharing stories, lessons, and strategies to help you make smarter decisions for your family and your future. Whether you're navigating retirement, raising kids, or just trying to make sense of the financial world, we've got you covered. Ben Tusky is a private wealth advisor and the vice president of financial planning at Sunpoint Investments. Dave Rath is a wealth advisor and the chief investment officer at Continuum Wealth Advisors. The views shared in this podcast are our own and don't necessarily reflect those of Sunpoint Investments or Continuum Wealth Advisors. Seriously, don't make financial decisions just because two dads with a microphone sound convincing. Talk to a professional that knows your situation. Some securities or strategies discussed may be holdings or recommendations for clients of Sunpoint Investments or Continuum Wealth Advisors. All right, let's get into it.
When it comes to saying yes or saying no, giving your kids too much, giving your kids too little, how do you make them appreciate what they have? And so here with me again today is Ben Tusky. Ben, how's everything going?
It's going. I think this is probably the topic that Mary Kate and I talk about, not the most, but it's probably top three in our house of like how we constantly feel like we get this wrong. So I'm curious to actually get some of your perspective here on what's right, what's wrong, and how do you actually like what's the measuring stick for
Yeah.
all this stuff? So yeah.
Before we get into that, let's talk about dad moment of the week. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, so my dad moment of the week is just arrived, but he just came home. James had to have two fillings in like the back of his mouth, and he's probably like most kids, not super excited to be at the dentist, but the last time he was there for like just the cleaning and for them to like inspect his teeth and like count his teeth because he's only four, you know, there was a lot of bribery, a lot of tears and emotions. So when we had to schedule this, there's a like a local light sedation that's being put in place. Or you can do just like the laughing gas, the thing over the nose, which seemed like pretty unfair to my wife, to the staff there, to James. Like he's already was pretty upset about being there in the first place. But of course, as advisors and as parent, like there's cost associated with everything. Dental insurance, I don't know, I feel like inherently stinks. is always a problem.
And why is there
And
separate insurances for like things on your face, right? You have
right,
vision insurance and dental insurance. Why does that not count as part of like the general health insurance?
I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that it's just I'm not a conspiracy guy, but it does feel like a gamified system a little bit. And it's really interesting. Of course, when you have to use your insurance, you're then faced with you got to go read through the policy, what's covered, what's not covered, at what percentage is the co-insurance. And I pay for a platinum, like the platinum, it's like the second highest. And I also live in this planning world, so I'm doing this all the time for clients. So obviously for us as well. And there was really no difference between the gold and the platinum that would impact us. But of course, then we get to today, and it wouldn't have mattered anyway. But the fillings were covered at 90%, but the local sedation was not covered at all. That is a factor under the exclusions. Of course, it is under the exclusions. The part that I found most fascinating was if he went in for general anesthesia, so into the IV and into a separate facility, they would have covered that at 60%. So like they would have forked out more money to cover general anesthesia than the local sedation. So we had to pay out of pocket. It was like 400 some dollars for the drink that you drink that like
HSA
makes them
funds.
loopy. Oh yeah, HSA funds, baby. And and so you're at least there's that benefit where you're like, okay, it was pre-FICA tax, pre-federal tax, and I live in Pennsylvania, pre-Pennsylvania tax. That helps you like accept some of that, but
When you pay from
accepting
your
defeat,
HSA, does it feel like you're spending monopoly money, like it's not real
yeah,
money? Because it's just like it's
absolutely.
not part of your checking account or savings account. It's just, hey, yeah, sure, why not?
It's in some other account that you never look at, and it is HSAs are a key area though with clients where it's very normal to sit on an excess amount of cash in an HSA because you can invest the money, but because it's out of sight, it's not, if you bank with Capital One and you have your HSA with another company and you invest with Fidelity, how often do you actually log on to your HSA account and look at it? I would bet you 95% of people don't even log on once a year. So unless you have an auto invest feature there, I do find that more people are sitting in cash than they even know. So that's always a helpful area. Mine auto invests everything above my deductible, which is $1,000 that I have just sitting cash. And there's times where I have to go back and like unwind some positions because we need more cash. This is a year that we've spent more money on child health care than we
Operationally,
have
they
in.
are kind of a pain because
Yeah,
if you do have anything above that $1,000 that you need to pay for, then you need to transfer. If you have the auto invest feature, you have to transfer it from the investment to the spending account, turn off the
correct.
auto invest so that it doesn't automatically sweep back in. It's again, we're in the business. It's easier for us to do that, but for anybody outside, it's just a nightmare of red tape and buttons to push and like how much is covered. It is so complex, and I'm grateful that we're in the business so we understand the ins and outs.
Even being, it's fun. It's interesting you said because Dave, even being in the business, like knowing what buttons to click, because like anytime you go to a website or Fidelity, Vanguard, Schwab, they all have like different names for things, and like these are in different areas of the website. So like if you don't know that you're actually moving it from like the wealth slash investment side back to the HSA, it does read a little bit like they're about to send you this money to your bank account, which would be a huge problem for tax
Yeah.
purposes. So, I've read through like the review your trade side like 5 times. I'm like, it is 100% right. I almost called the number. And it's like, if I face that and I work in this industry, can you imagine the I feel like most people would just be like, you know what, just sit it all as cash. I don't care about the money growing. I just want it to be there when I need it. And for that, I get it. I get it. It makes sense. But HSA is phenomenal, phenomenal. And the last bit I'll say on HSA is it is in the proposed tax legislation that the current administration has started to move forward with, where they would double the allowable amount for HSA investments. So I think a pretty big win for things. I did scroll through. I did not see anything for dependent care FSAs in there
We're
yet.
gonna stick to $5,000 for eternity on that.
Forever. So some way it's gonna be $5,000 a month per kid, and it's gonna be like, okay, I get I get it all in one shot. But I did see that. Obviously this is just proposals. We'll never know if we'll know in the future if this is gonna pass. But I think generally a win for families.
Yeah. Well, hopefully little man is okay. And what's the feeding regimen after two fillings? Is it just like ice cream and soft
I think
foods?
so. I think that it's one of those days as parents where you're just like, you can't care. Like this can't be a day where you're like, oh, I'm gonna cut back on them to eat. Honestly, dude, whatever you eat, you got to get enough food in your body to like remain healthy for the day and really not be like whiny and emotional because you're starving, your mouth hurts, like all of that stuff. So I hear footsteps upstairs, like he's running around. So like I think we're good right now, but remember, the Novocaine is still there, alive and well. Check back at 12:30. It's probably gonna be a different picture today. But all right, what's your dad moment of the week?
So took my boys to the monster truck show in MetLife, which was a really cool experience. Growing up, I wasn't into monster trucks much, but I think every little boy is at some level interested in these giant trucks. And for me as an adult, it was pretty cool to see the stuff that
Yeah.
they were able to do. But the story was really around getting down to the stadium. So it was at MetLife in Jersey. Took us almost twice as long as we thought because of traffic on a Saturday.
Oh,
And so we park in the parking lot as the show is starting. We're finding our spot. And of course, we parked on the other side of the stadium.
oh, jeez.
And you don't realize how big the stadiums are until you have to walk with two young kids to the other side. And so we're hoofing it as fast as we can possibly go. And
Hoofing it.
the kids are, they're an anchor behind me. And we get to the metal detectors, and I keep tripping the metal detector. A guy says, maybe it's your wallet. My boys are already through, so now there's extra anxiety of I have to keep my eyes on them. So put my wallet in there. No, it doesn't work. Go back out. Where's your Apple Watch? It might be your watch. It's my Apple Watch. Okay. So I take it off in my haste to take it off so that I can get through and get our boys into the show. It slips out of my hand face down on the cement, shatters the face of my brand new Apple Watch, a couple months old. I could tell the guy didn't want to say anything. He was just like, sorry. He had no comment at all. Like I was steaming internally. And so we finally get into the stadium, and we see the show for a couple of the acts, I guess, or a couple of the races,
Yeah.
and then there's a thunderstorm that rolls through. So now we all have to shelter inside in the bowels of MetLife, and trying to keep a 4 and a 6 year old entertained in a stadium concourse for 40 minutes it was at that point it was 6:30 at night, so they're
Oh,
already
jeez.
a little bit tired, they're already a little bit antsy. So we got past that, finished the show, and then on the way back, now I got to walk all the way back around the stadium,
Yeah.
and Michael trips, skins his knee, so he is now crying. I have to pick him up and carry him. My arms were ridiculously sore from a workout I had done that week, so I'm struggling. And now because I was in a rush, I could not locate my car. I knew like the general vicinity of it, but I could not locate my car. So now I'm looking all over the parking lot. I'm trying the alarm feature. The only problem is so is everybody else that can't find their car. So the parking
Oh.
lot was just filled with like beeping cars. I'm like, this is not helping at all, guys. So we finally get into our car at like 8:30 at night, and that was the end of the day, and it was an adventure. It was worth it for the show, but bookended by just two not great experiences getting to there and leaving.
Wow. All right. The break in the iWatch, that would really, really I mean, that's just icing on the cake. What did you think we went when it was at the link here in Philadelphia? How was it much louder than you anticipated?
It was very loud, and
Yeah.
I've heard that because we're seeing it outside, or we saw it outside, it was less than if you see it like in a closed arena. I can't
Yeah.
even imagine the decibel level in those arenas.
It was they started we were like in our seats, and of course then it's like started raining. Like we had similar weather, like no thunderstorms, but it started raining. James like wouldn't let go of his ears. It was like, and I was like,
You didn't
I
bring the
said, Mary
earmuffs?
Kate, no.
Oh
So
boy.
we went, then it's like, all right, now we're stuck. So I same same thing as you. I put James on my shoulders. I had just squatted in the morning. So I'm trying to go down all the flight steps. Dude, my legs were gel. I was like, I'm gonna just fall. Honestly, at this point, if I fall, I just don't want him to get hurt. That's just where my life is right now, is just falling down stadium steps. But we walked around and I was like, these guys are gonna hose me for like $50 per, and I gotta buy two because like if I go back, Avery's gonna be like, I want them too. But they were like 20 bucks a pair, so it was actually very reasonable. So once they had those on, they loved it. It was, I mean, and the show for as an adult, I thought was very entertaining. Like the fact that they can maneuver that big of a vehicle with like that much control, they're incredibly talented and obviously requires tons of practice. I was blown away.
I'm always curious how something like that developed, right?
Yeah,
At some point,
yeah,
you had, oh, let's make a slightly bigger truck and see what we
right,
can do
right,
with it. And then it's evolved into where it's at now. And at some point, they had to say, okay, enough is enough. Like, this is the maximum size
right.
of a monster truck. But like at some, there is the development up to that. And like, how did you go from just like a Model T back in the 20s to
Yeah,
now the tires are the size of my SUV?
yeah. No, I, I need to see the development of monster trucks. Now I need to, Perplexity would be able to probably help us
There we go.
understand what that looks like from
So
AI.
let's get into the
Did
episode.
were you hold on, were you solo for this trip?
I was solo. I actually met a friend of mine, and he brought
Okay.
his son, and he
Okay.
goes, "Man, you are brave going solo with two kids." I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Well, it is what it is. I don't think Monique would enjoy this that much," and it was a guy's night out. So she got a night with the girls. I racked up some brownie points. It was all
Yeah, I was
good
gonna say. Yeah, you racked up. You put that in the bank account and
for sure.
you cash that in later.
So
Uh,
let's talk a little bit about the balance of giving your kids too much, the financial consequences, obviously, of just saying yes to everything, the downfall of saying no to too much, and how do you strike that balance? So I'll start with you. And do you have you settled on anything with you and Mary Kate? Like, these are the absolute yeses, these are the absolute nos. How do you approach that on a day-to-day basis?
yeah, I mean, I don't think we have like absolutes. It's everything just feels very situational. The things that we've gravitated more economics to is like experience stuff of like we did it last summer. We were less prepared last summer to go to the beach as often as we did. Like that's the stuff that we want to say yes to. I was talking to my neighbor after Avery got on the bus this morning about this topic, and 3 months ago, Mary Kate and I were trying to figure out like, hey, as we start to get into the summer, should do we want to sign the kids up to like do another activity, another sport? But we hadn't been in like the thick of it like we are right now. We've done swim lessons every week for 2 weeks, or every day for 2 weeks straight, from 6:30 at night till 7:15. Like Avery has dance on Wednesdays. They play soccer on Saturdays. Avery has theater on Sunday. Like it's a lot of stuff to be doing. And I had said 3 months ago, I was like, I just feel like future us is going to be thankful that we don't do that. I think we just say no. We sign up for the pool. We're trying to get to the beach a little bit more with like a free beach house to go to. Like I think we should just kind of let it see what happens. And what I was talking to my neighbor about was she was like, I really regret signing up, like, one of my kids for whatever it was, or I think travel soccer starts in like the middle of July. And I had said, I am so thankful today that we decided not to sign up for anything over the summer other than like join the pool and that's it, and sign them up for the summer camp stuff. because it's really, just like the schedule gets so busy. And you can't do that into perpetuity, or you start to have some of those negative effects on like family life where, you know, it's stuff just gets challenging. So travel is probably more of the yes. We've been starting to cut much more back on the toys and getting things when we're out and stuff like that. Of just like, hey, we have so much stuff at home. Is you don't even play with half the stuff. I mean, the whole corner over there's been untouched for at least 8 months.
Yeah, and
So,
from a
what about you?
time
Yeah,
perspective, I'm with you, and this might be old man shaking his fist at the clouds, but when I was younger, we like for soccer or t-ball, we had maybe one practice during the week and a game on the weekend, and that was like that until I was 12 years old. As far as I can remember, I don't remember going like all over the place to every tournament in the tri-state area and having my parents' schedule just be jam-packed. Like there was a ton of downtime when I was a kid, and I was probably complaining about that because I was bored.
yeah,
But it does allow for like life to fill in the gaps. You know,
right,
you have an activity with my I would have an activity with my brother that we just kind of invented a game and played outside for the whole like having a structured schedule. You have to be here at this day, and it becomes overwhelming not only for the kid but also for the parent, and it's a self-inflicted wound, right?
right.
We're choosing to do this to ourselves and to our kids, and it's almost a little bit of societal pressure. And now not only are the leagues more competitive,
Yep,
and you have to now specialize in a sport, the days of the multi-sport athlete are over, because
yep.
if you want to play on the varsity team, you're going to have to start your soccer career at age 5 and play travel all the way until then. Like, what happened to just enjoying sports and enjoying activities without any sort of competitive aspect to it? So again, that's my gripe for the day. But I I'm going to be very vigilant about like how we control our time. And the theme of the episode is saying yes or saying no, and finding that balance. And there are a lot of like self-help people out there on the internet that say like embrace the power of saying no. Like
Yeah.
take control of your time, really protect it, and like the more you overextend yourself, the busier you're going to be, the less that you're going to have for just like those organic moments that happen in life.
I think that that's my concern is like missing those organic moments. Like everything is so prescribed for you. And I think a little bit about how I was raised, and I know I've mentioned it before on episodes, like we grew up as speed skaters. Like we practiced during the week. We would drive to Reading about 45, 50 minutes away, and then Saturdays we would drive to Maryland. It was an all day thing. Like you lost your whole Saturday. And if there was a meet, sayonara. That'd be like Rochester or down in North Carolina or something like that. Like you leave Saturday morning at 3 o'clock in the morning and you come back on either Saturday night or you come back on Sunday. You don't have a weekend. And you think about, man, how did my parents just want to do? Didn't they have hobbies and things that they wanted to do for themselves to make themselves happy? Didn't like they didn't have friends that they went and saw. And I don't know, I think back at that stuff, I don't know, my wife and I have a lot of friends. And we just have a different life that we want to live, and we don't want it to revolve around, yeah, starting at age 5, 6, 7, 8, playing soccer or basketball, whatever it is, all year round to specialize in a sport. I just, I want there to be enjoyment, but I also want there to, like you said, I want life to be able to fill in some gaps and us to be able to, like, on a whim, be like, hey, we're going to go to the Phillies game. Or, hey, we have nothing this weekend. Let's just go do this. You can't do that if your prescribed weekends are just jam packed every week, and I think that's a little bit of what I'm afraid of is going to happen. So I feel like that's what we're trying to say no to.
And then on the toys front, we're guilty of it too, but not so much from us, but your immediate and extended family.
Yeah,
There is a limit to how much toys kids can play with. We have a house full of toys, and most of them have been given to them from grandmas, grandpas. aunts, uncles.
Right.
And by the way, side note, my brother got me or got my kids this thing called a sound blaster, for one for each of them. The thing is the most loud and obnoxious
A
toy in the
sound
world.
blaster?
And so I sent him a message. I was like, well, thanks for that. And he said, well, you got my daughter a karaoke machine for Christmas, so I guess we're even.
That's a fair.
Fair point. Yep. So toys, we want to keep them to a reasonable amount, but at the same time, you also want your kid to have fun. And so this is like the root of what we're discussing today is how much do you provide for your kid so that you make their life better than yours, subjectively speaking, but not too much where they're spoiled. And I don't know where that line is because there's going to come times and that whether it's stopping for ice cream on the way home from the park or seeing a toy in the store and they really really want it right then, but you don't want to deal with the implications of saying no and then having them have a meltdown in the middle of the store. So you just acquiesce and say sure, why not. I just punted that problem down the road. And so
Right.
you're you're constantly, and you don't want everything to turn into a lesson either, right? You don't want to be like, well, here's the value of money because you want this Matchbox car. No, you just want to see your kid happy. And
Yeah.
so I tend more on the on the soft side where I'll say, yeah, sure, let's do it. I want to see you happy. I want to have that special moment with them. But then the cumulative effect of that is a house full of toys. Now they ask for ice cream after dinner every night. So like you kind of make your own bed at some point, and then you have to sleep in it later on down the road.
So like I live on the other side of the that equation. Like I say no to a lot. And what then happens is they'll make the subtle comments. Like they'll go ask mom. They don't come and ask me. So then I've started to like reevaluate. Like it's not that it like saying that it hurts is like the wrong way to describe it. Is it's more of just like the subtle emotional impact on you of am I being a jerk by just like saying no all the time? And I was watching maybe I don't know if I was reading this like parenting blog and it was saying that parents fall into this trap that I'm talking about myself when they feel like they need to remain in control. And like you don't need to be in control all the time. It's okay. It's okay for your kids to push back. Like that we're going to want them to do that in society. They're going to do it in your own house. And it's okay to just step back and they're in control. You can say yes, they can do it. It's okay. But I've said no for so long, and then there's this reaction when I say yes to something. They like go bananas. And it's like, am here, I'll give you the best example. They ask all the time if they can watch their iPads while eating a meal. I'm an absolute hard no
I'm
on
with you
that.
on that.
So then when I come down in the morning or come down at lunch, if I'm like working in the morning on like a Saturday, come down and they have their tablets and my wife has made them lunch, it's like, wait, hold on a second. Like, we don't do this. We're not. And then dad's the bad guy because I always stick to no. And yeah, it's just like that's the thing. Then they ask all the time, every single can I have it's dinner time? No, we're gonna sit here and talk. Well, can I have my iPad while we eat? No, no.
And we run into that too here in our family. Rules are meant to be enforced, but sometimes the minutia of the like I don't know the word that I'm looking for, but like the aspect of that rule, it becomes a thing where does it really matter? Like for instance, finish that last green bean on your plate because in this household we eat all of our food. There are
Yeah,
starving kids in China. Does it really matter? No. And so
right,
sometimes I'll step back and be like, what am I? Is it because of the aspect of control?
right.
I'm trying to enforce my will. In the grand scheme of everything that we're talking about here, it does not matter one bit. but we like to think that if we consistently make the quote unquote correct choices, that our kids will end up better in the future. And that is true. But at the same time, being authoritarian on everything, I think can also just lead to too much strife between you and your kids, you and your wife.
Yeah.
And so there's no easy answer. I believe in rules. I'm I'm a stickler. Don't get that twisted. But I also sometimes will just back off and be like, all right, let's not fight this battle right now because
Yeah. Yeah.
we don't need to. And everybody kind of knows the general idea of what we're doing here, and we don't want to make it seem like we're just one of those old from like the 40s where the kids are better off seen and not heard, right? And so
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know the right answer, and like I tend more towards like yeah, let's do that, like let's have that experience, let's do I like the random nights for ice cream, and but then it turns
Yeah.
into let's do this every night, and okay, now we got to pull back.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's the constant like, and I think that's probably why I get in this path of saying no, because then I'm like, I say yes once I know you're going to try to just keep doing this. But to your point, when I step back and just ask myself, does this matter? Like if I ask myself that question, it diffuses pretty much everything. Because immediately like, no, this is like why are we fighting about this? Like why and it's not we are fighting about this. Ben, why are you making this into an argument? It doesn't need to be. You could just, hey, okay, so what? Let them win. Like let them have their thing once in a while. And yeah, I think that that's like there's no way to like properly measure this. And I know that I said that at the beginning of the call. I don't think there's any accurate way to measure this in the like saying yes the right amount, saying no, because like there is no right amount. It's so situational. But I think if you are getting pushback, if you are getting like your kids are asking, it's just like so normal. It's normal. They should be asking those things. And they should be allowed to ask and push back and question. I think that's part of growing up and getting life experience.
And our kids aren't even the age yet where money is going to start being one of those things,
Yeah.
right? Once they become teenagers and they start asking for money to go out, money for gas, money for whatever, and how much do you pay for? How much money do you give them? And then farther down the road, how much money do you leave to them as an
Yeah.
inheritance? Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't. I think that there's a limit to that, and Warren Buffett, I think, has the line that says, I think he has a line for everything in finance. And if not, then you just quote him and worry about it later when if anybody calls you on it, be like, yeah, Warren Buffett said it. He said you want to give your kids enough to be comfortable, but not enough that they never have to work. Like something
Right.
along those lines. I totally screwed that up. But the idea of it is you a person with everything, especially if it was given to them, not worked for, is going to have just a completely twisted perception on the way that things work. And those, in my opinion, do not turn out to be good people.
Jimmy Carr has my favorite line in this topic area, which is having things isn't fun. Getting things is fun. And his other one is show me a trust fund baby and I'll show you somebody that's mentally twisted. And like those two things is how I really think about like of course like at some very far future date in our life of like what will be left behind to kids. And I think it's less the money, and I think it's actually really where actually Jack Dwyer, our president here at Sunpoint, spends a lot of his time with family offices, which is education for the next generation, not just around money, but primarily around family values and being good stewards. And yeah, you obviously know your family has money. You've flown private chartered planes to every vacation. You probably can connect the dots. You don't need to see the numbers in the accounts. But how do you ensure that you are good in society with all of those zeros and commas? And I think that those are like, yeah, you want your kids to be comfortable, but you don't want them to be lazy and do nothing. And I think that comes down more to family values and instilling that. The one very old, very, very wealthy family office that we work with, generation one created the money. Obviously, their family office client, mega wealth. Generation two, the oldest son has his PhD. The other son is an executive at a biotech company. Like I look at that situation, I'm like, they got the values so right. Like those kids didn't sit there and enjoy the silver spoon. They said, no, I have something to contribute to this world, and I'm going to build my own thing. I'm going to go do it. And I'm always reminded of those situations of like, that's the right way in my eyes that like those parents did something very right. Where there was enough there to provide benefits, but constant instilling of values was the ultimate priority.
I also think about in our world, Jim O'Shaughnessy, who is very famous author, fund manager,
Yeah.
good podcaster. He's one of my favorite people to read and listen to, and his son Patrick has made his own way for himself, and I think he's now the CEO of O'Shaughnessy Asset Management.
Yeah.
He runs his own successful podcast. He has got other business ventures, and to hear Patrick talk to people in the way that he thinks about things and thinks about the world, same thing, you get the sense that Jim raised him the correct way. And that's, I think, something that we strive for is obviously Jim was very successful, and Patrick, it seems, from an outsider's perspective, turned out to be somebody that you would want your son to turn out to be, your daughter, and instilling that sort of work ethic, instilling that sort of values, like that is something that we strive for. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I've been rewatching that History Channel show, The Men Who Built America, and the Vanderbilts. I think Cornelius Vanderbilt was the richest person in America at some point, and I want to say that his family wealth got destroyed, like absolutely destroyed in 2 generations. His son, at least the way that they portray it in the show, was not a great heir, not a great business person, not a great steward of money. And if I remember correctly, the story of the Vanderbilts is that they just basically became completely bankrupt in 2 generations, maybe 3. But they went from the richest family in the country to then being essentially broke, and it was just all due to the fact that whatever happened internally did not work out the way that you would hope for somebody with those means.
Those are the things that you're like, those are the situations I feel like it would be interesting to be studied, like in parallel to like an O'Shaughnessy family. To like, okay, what was Jim and whatever Jim's wife's name is, like, what were they doing while raising children? Those would be the lessons. I don't know if Jim's ever been on a podcast. I'm sure every podcast he's on, he's talking about finance and less so about being a dad and raising a successful son, um, and a good member of society. But like doing that and contrasting it against our friends, the Vandys, and what not to do. I think that would be like fascinating to put those two next to each other.
I did hear Jim at one point talk about his thoughts on not necessarily exactly what we're talking about today, but when Patrick or any of his other kids would come to him with a question, instead of giving them the answer to that question, he would say, let's look into it together. Yeah. So it would instill that attitude of like, let's go find out, instead of I ask, you answer, I ask, you give, I ask, whatever.
Right.
And so having that response mechanism where if I ask a question, if I'm a child, and I know that the answer is going to be, let's go figure it out together, at some point the kid is just going to go start figuring stuff out on their own. And so the same thing with like money. And I've worked since I was 11 years old, delivering papers at 11. I know that if I want money, I need to go do work to get it. But if you constantly are saying, Dad, can I have money? Money ends up in your hand. Dad, can I have toy? Toy ends up in your hand. Yeah. There is no reality built into that. And so, to your point earlier, you have to say no, or at the very least, instill some level of self-reliance. And that can be, Dad, I want this toy. Great, let's look at your piggy bank that you've accumulated from doing chores throughout the house. And we touched on this in a previous episode. And then utilize the money that you've worked hard to get to pay for this thing. Of course, the
Yeah.
actual monetary value is not that important, but it's the idea of spending their money that they've worked for to get the thing that they want instead of just saying, I want this, here's that.
Right. 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 Yeah. I I think that's the way to do it. I think that also knowing like when to do like I always try to remind myself at 6 and 4, I don't think that that's the time for like many of these lessons. And there's definitely money lessons that we do because when we do that exercise that you talk about, like especially with Avery, she's like, I don't need that toy. Never mind, sorry. And but like we can. There's a give and take here, and she's like, her piggy bank's like full. She's like, I like it being full. And you're like,
She's a
well,
future financial planner.
yeah, yeah. She's it's in her genetics. I gotta ramp it up and start talking about investing. But good point to I think wrap the episode.
Yeah, I think that was a discussion. Obviously, we can talk a lot more about that. And if anybody does have the secret formula, please let me know. Would love to piggyback on anything that people are talking about or instilling in their kids, and hearing ideas from different people is always helpful. So,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Episode 10 in the books. I think we're now officially part of the top 5% of podcasts that make it past the double digits. So
double digits. I like
we
it.
did it. We did it. Until next time.
Until next
See you
time.
in
See
two
ya.
weeks.